And a very happy Wednesday to you at 12:08 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, today was yet another LA City Council meeting where constituents are voicing their concerns about the budget before it's finalized. And one of those residents has a very important message of the budget priorities that he wants to make sure are locked in for the next year.
Now, let's move on to the general public comment is that this budget makes no mention about our sex worker on Figueroa Street.
I know it's one gag, but boy, is he committed to it.
I am here. I was born to be a sex worker. I will continue to be a sex worker. And all of my family, we are 18th generation sex worker. But this budget does not reflect our family value, our family tradition. And then the most important is the American prostitution culture. So I am here to...
I didn't know there was one.
Well, apparently there is on Figueroa.
So I am here to stand against the council, to stand against the city attorney, because our sex worker deserve $30 minimum wage. Our Figueroa worker deserve health insurance. Our Figueroa worker...
Wait, I got to imagine the ladies on Figueroa make more than $30 an hour.
Well, it depends on how many teeth they have.
Our Figueroa worker deserve all...
If you're making less than $30 an hour on Figueroa, it might be time to find a new line of work.
Well, $30 is about what the copay will be once they get a VD.
Our Figueroa worker deserve all LAPD protection. And then most important, our Figueroa sex worker, we deserve free condom care and the free aftercare, the morning after pill.
You know, I think those are some of the things that are in Barbara Ferrer's vending machines that are already free for anybody, including Narcan.
Oh, yeah. You can go to that vending machine. You can get a Mountain Dew. You can get a Twix bar. And you can get a pharmaceutical abortion.
Free condom care and the free aftercare, the morning after pill. But this council continue to ignore the well-being of our Figueroa sex worker. This mayor continue to ignore us. We will never be silent. I support illegal prostitute, and we will continue to fight for illegal prostitute.
Boy, that reminds me of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
His concern is that if a prostitute on Figueroa gets crabs and they're in the country illegally, they're not going to qualify for Medi-Cal under Gavin Newsom's future budget.
Well, I guess that's a legitimate concern. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. The top story here in the state of California today is that there are shots fired in the race to be the next governor of the state of California. We know that the biggest bold-faced name who is regarded as a potential candidate in that race is the former Vice President Kamala Harris. She said she needs until the end of summer to decide whether or not she will be a candidate in that race. In the meantime, other California politicians have announced that they are running for governor, including former Orange County Congresswoman Katie Porter.
Please.
The state's lieutenant governor, Eleni Kanalakis.
For Californians.
The former Secretary of Health and Human Services, Javier Baccaria.
Scrub it.
And others. One of these individuals is also the former mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa.
No, peanut.
And he knows the Democratic Party establishment is not going to get behind him. If he's going to run and he's going to win, he's going to have to do so as an outsider. In which case, he's going to have to find a lane as an outsider and an argument as an outsider that makes him the logical choice to be the next governor of California. And he's decided that the way he's going to do it is by going after the former vice president and the former Secretary of Health and Human Services because they knew that Joe Biden was senile. They lied about it. They covered it up. And the Democratic Party ended up with an unelectable ticket on the ballot. And because of that, we have 4 years of Donald Trump. And he did so, Randy, in a very aggressive way.
He put out a statement that didn't get enough attention, so he went on the old Instagrams. Here is a video that Antonio Villaraigosa posted this morning.
I can't believe what I've been reading and seeing in the news about the Biden cover-up. I'm wondering if the people in the cabinet sitting in meetings with President Biden.
You mean like Kamala and Becerra? I mean,
a couple.
He's not directly calling them out, but we know what he's doing.
For Secretary of Health and Education Service, I nominated Javier Becerra.
Shouldn't we have known back then?
We did. They didn't.
That was like week 2.
How they didn't know what was going on. We all saw it in the debate. This is a massive problem that directly led to a second Donald Trump term, and as a result, all Californians are paying the price. Now Harris and Becerra.
Didn't you endorse Harris when she took over?
He did, and I believed he endorsed Becerra when he ran for Attorney General in California.
Now Harris and Becerra are talking about leading the state of California as a possible candidate for governor.
Well, Becerra is running. Nobody's taking him seriously, but he is running.
Scrub it.
Boy, what a disaster that interview was.
Might have been the most disastrous interview of this entire cycle.
Could be.
But California voters deserve to know. What did you know? When did you know it? And why didn't you speak up?
By the way, if Antonio Villaraigosa decided that this was his moment to capture attention, get people focusing on his campaign for something that's a very legitimate question, shouldn't he have filmed it in somewhere that didn't sound like a bathroom?
He sounds like he's at the men's room at LAX.
Today, I'm calling on Kamala Harris and Javier Becerra to make them...
Wait, that's how you pronounce it?
Well, he should have some FaceTime with Grampy Joe then.
For Secretary of Health and Education Service, I nominated Javier Becerra.
I'm calling on Kamala Harris and Javier Becerra to make themselves available to the press and voters.
Well, Kamala never did that even when she was running.
No, and if she does run, she's going to expect to be anointed like she's some kind of monarch.
And voters, because there's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
So that's the video that Antonio Villaraigosa posted on his Instagram. This is, of course, in the last couple of weeks, he's gone on several interviews on Bakersfield TV and on some more right-wing podcasts where he's definitely painting himself as more centrist than some of the other people that are running for governor.
I never thought these words would come out of my mouth. So let me just tell you, I haven't been drinking before I started today's program. But what Antonio Villaraigosa is doing is smart.
Oh, peanut.
Because let me tell you, after reading the book Fight, which I talked about earlier in the week, and I'm now reading the Jake Tapper book that arrived in my house yesterday, it's very clear why Kamala Harris lost the election. Take all of the Grampy Joe months as the presumptive Democratic nominee off the table for a second. What the book concluded was that she essentially lost for 3 reasons, but one overarching reason. The overarching reason that she lost was that she had no reason for running. She had no worldview that was clear to the voters. She was running because Grampy Joe dropped out of the race and she was next in line. It was her turn, was basically the argument. Remember, that was Hillary Clinton's campaign motto. I'm with her.
How'd that go?
Yeah, that's not something you say when you pick a president. That's something you say when you crash someone's wedding at a hotel by the airport. I'm with her. But she had no reason for running. And even if you didn't like Donald Trump, you knew why he was running. He was running to shut down the border, impose tariffs on other nations, and to rein in the federal agencies. Everyone understood that. Why was Kamala Harris running? Can you answer that question? I certainly can't. Maybe you have a better idea, but the voters couldn't answer that question by and large. If and when she runs for California governor, she's going to do the same thing. She thinks she will be the front runner. She thinks she will be elected. And she thinks that she doesn't have to provide a reason as to why she's a candidate for public office. Why is she doing it? Well, she can win.
We are doing it.
Why else is she doing it? Well, this is good for her legacy. Why else is she doing it? She wants to be a foil for Donald Trump so she can run for president again. She's not running because she's thought through all of our problems and feels like she has solutions for what ails us. She doesn't know anything about our insurance crisis or what's going on with the boondoggle that is the bullet train or homelessness or crime or anything else. In fact, she doesn't care. That's going to be a massive problem for her. The other thing that caused her to lose the election, according to these books, is that there was no daylight between her and Grampy Joe. She refused to take any different positions from a very unpopular president. Why did she do that? That was the deal she made to get his endorsement to cut everyone else out of the process, including Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro, and our own Gavin Newsom. That turned out to be disastrous for her when Donald Trump painted her not as an agent of change, but as the status quo, and she couldn't deviate from the status quo because then she'd be violating the deal. The third thing that became a massive problem for her was the ridiculous position that she took on wanting to defund ICE so she could use the money to pay for transgender surgeries for illegal aliens and prisoners. Everyone thought that came from The Onion, but it was truly something that she said. She said it on tape with Aaron Burnett on CNN, and she said it in writing when she was asked about it by the ACLU. When Donald Trump started hammering her with an ad for taking that position, her campaign decided that they wouldn't respond to it, because if they were to respond to it, they couldn't say it wasn't true, because it was. What they could do was they could say it wasn't true and just hope that they muddy the water and no one would look into the details, which wasn't going to happen because, again, it was on tape and in writing. The other option that they had was they could say she changed her position, in which case you open yourself up for criticism as a flip-flopper. So they decided they just wouldn't respond to it at all. And what happened? Donald Trump ran that ad for weeks in the swing states and elsewhere, and she just took punch after punch after punch after punch, and she couldn't respond. As soon as they started playing that ad, her numbers among black men, among Hispanic men, among Asians, among blue-collar voters started dropping like a stone, and there was nothing they could do to stop the bleeding. There was no good answer from their campaign. If the allegation that Antonio Villaraigosa is going to throw at her is that Joe Biden was senile, everyone around him knew it, and everyone around him lied to us about it, there is no good answer to that because it's true. She can say that she thought he was totally with it. Who is going to believe that? She can say that as vice president, you can't take a different position from the president. But how do you think that looks? My guess is she's going to do exactly what she did with the transgender ad, and she's going to ignore it. And if Villaraigosa is aggressive about this, he is going to punch her and punch her and punch her and punch her, and she is going to offer no defense like she did the last time. She lied, she covered it up, and she allowed a cabal of unelected people to run the country. And I think there's a better than even chance that she and others knew that he had cancer, and they lied to us about that too. If you're Antonio Villaraigosa and you take the mantle as the one who is going to prosecute her for being a deeply untrustworthy person, and she has no reason for running for office, I think Kamala Harris is more beatable than you think. In fact, I think she is the Democrat, even though she polls the best right now, who is most likely to lose a general election. There's also resentment out there that exists among Democrats for running such a pathetic campaign that they lost the election to Donald Trump.
Especially if you're one of those people, they got a text message every 10 minutes for 6 months. Give me more money, give me more money, give me more money.
In a weird sort of way, I think Antonio Villaraigosa so far is running the smartest race for governor compared to all of these other candidates.
This guy?
No, peanut.
Well, what can I say? He's the tallest building in Omaha.
Well, and if you hear him in some of these long-form interviews that he's been doing, he is definitely painting himself in a lane where he is running far to the right of people like Kamala Harris or Eleni Kanalakis or Javier Baccaria.
So here's our question to you at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Now that we know that Kamala Harris covered up Joe Biden's senility, and it's more likely than not that she covered up his cancer diagnosis too, do you think she could lose the race for governor? I do. Not only do I think she could lose, I think she's the Democrat most likely to lose. What say you at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222? If you want to send us an email, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Do you think Kamala Harris could lose the race for governor in 2026? I do, and it's clear Antonio Villaraigosa does too. What say you at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Right now we're taking your calls at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Antonio Villaraigosa is going after the former vice president and the former secretary of Health and Human Services for covering up the mental decline of former President Joe Biden.
But California voters deserve to know. What did you know? When did you know it? And why didn't you speak up?
And I think that's a smart move on behalf of the former mayor of Los Angeles. What say you? Do you think Kamala Harris could lose this election if she jumps in? 800-222-5222 is the number. Let's begin with Ken in L.A. Ken, hello.
Hi, John. Thanks for taking my call. Hi, Randy. It's been a while since I stumbled through this point, but you've raised this question before in different ways. I still think that Kamala Harris has the strongest chance of winning the governorship because I live here in L.A. amongst the most rabid liberal people who have Trump derangement syndrome. She's not going to make this a campaign about California. She's going to make this another campaign about beating Donald Trump. There is such a TDS going on that as soon as she mentions Trump, people start foaming at the mouth. And I know that because I walk amongst here in Studio City, people are still wearing masks. And when Trump's name comes up, you can see the foam coming from the sides of the masks. People are a special kind of developmentally disabled liberal here in California. Now, my second point is Randy said that Villaraigosa is running to the right of Harris. And I respectfully disagree. He's running in opposition. He is as left-wing as they come. Notice that he's not running against any of her positions, but this is the only course that he's taking, that she knew something and she didn't say anything. He's not disagreeing with any of the left-wing positions. This is still a Trump derangement syndrome state with a special kind of stupid liberal. Those are my points.
Okay, let's think this through together here for a second, because
Please.
She's going to try to nationalize the election. You think that, I think that, Randy thinks that, we all think that. She's going to try to make it about Trump, make it about abortion, right, make it about the Supreme Court, make it about climate change, all those things. If she does that, my guess is the press will go along with her because they are ideologically aligned with her, and the race for governor will be based on all of those national issues that the office has nothing to do with. If that happens, and everyone takes the bait and everyone talks about the national issues, and you're Antonio Villaraigosa, and you're going after her for covering up Joe Biden's senility, and you stand on stage and you say, okay, here's a poll that shows that Josh Shapiro would have beaten Trump. Here's a poll that shows that, Gretchen Whitmer would have beaten Trump. Here's a poll that shows that Gavin Newsom would have beaten Trump. Because she lied to Democrats, because she lied to people voting in this election, we ended up with the two unelectable candidates who could not beat Donald Trump. Because of her lies, none of these people were able to put their name on the ballot, all of whom would have won. She is the reason you have Donald Trump. If you're Antonio Villaraigosa, that's the point you make.
That's a great point. May I respond very quickly by 2 points? Number one, he's not smart enough to do that. That's number one. Number two, and if he chose you to be his campaign manager, that would be the smartest thing he could ever do. Number two, with the liberals in this state, electing Kamala Harris would be the biggest middle finger that they could give to Donald Trump. She would be the poke in his eye, and that's the priority among these rabid, foaming at the mouth, still masked up, still lining up for COVID booster liberals. And I live amongst them. I talk to them every day, my neighbors. I had a long conversation with a neighbor yesterday. It just amazes me how they choose willful ignorance. They want to be misled. So because of their derangement syndromes, plural, not just Donald Trump. But
all right.
Now, to be fair, Ken, some of those people foaming at the mouth, that's meth.
Well, I guess me too then.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to David in San Rafael. David, hello.
Hello. Well, you've made some excellent points, and I agree. Just want to put a little bit of nuance in, but I want to thank Kamala Harris for setting back the Democratic Party about 10 years, both nationally, and if she runs for governor, taking down Gavin Newsom's presidential campaign along with it. The nuance I have on this is that if she was a competent executive on a national level, the Democratic Party would have gone to her way earlier during Biden's downfall. They would have, if she would have been an Al Gore, right, who could have presented well, they would have inserted her, made the mea culpa with Biden. We'd all feel sorry, and she would have been running as an incumbent. But because they couldn't trust her, obviously inside the White House, they were more afraid of Kamala than they were of Trump if she came in. She came down. Now, if she runs again, just like the last caller said, your points exactly, she would highlight also California and the incompetence of our executive politicians. And I don't think it would go well for Gavin Newsom in a national campaign. If she's also running.
Here's something else to think about. If she runs for governor of California, she'll be running to succeed Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom wants to be president. She wants to be president. If you're Gavin Newsom, you don't lift a finger to help her. In fact, you actively try to sabotage her because at this point, she's working the same corner as you.
We'd have a gang up, right? We'd have Trump and Newsom attacking Kamala here in California.
He wouldn't do it publicly. What he would do is privately undercut her at every opportunity that he had. And it would be ugly, and they would start to hate each other privately. I don't think that the Cold War would go hot because that wouldn't benefit either one of them. But I guarantee you, if she were to run for governor of California, he would use every bit of power he has to make sure that he slits her throat. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Mike in Tahunga. Mike, hello.
I hope she does run. I hope Villaraigosa runs. I hope Katie Porter runs. Bring them all in and flood the market, and then we'll get a Bianco or a Caruso. in to fix California.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Eric in Sonoma. Eric, hello.
Hey, John, thank you for taking my call. I think voters in California, actually, I don't think, I know, voters in California have a very short-term memory when it comes to politics. And I think in order to get us to elect a Republican governor in the state, Kamala Harris gives us the best chance to do that. And we just got to hammer her just in furiously to try to, get people's attention. The more exposure on her policies, the better. I think she's the least likable candidate of all of the Democrats that are running in this race. And I think you're right. There is a Cold War going on within the Democrat Party. And much like Joe Biden and Jill Biden did to kneecap her in the presidential, I think you're absolutely right. Newsom will very so eloquently do it behind the scenes because he's a coward, and we all know this. And I just think that, Republicans need to also avoid the unpopular policies that we need to court moderates in the state. I believe there are more moderates that would vote for a Republican than would a Democrat. If we could just move away from national issues and abortion and focus on the failures and the failed policy of Democrats and the supermajority here in California for my entire life.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Eric in San Pedro. Eric, hello.
Hey, guys. I think she's going to run, but I don't think she's going to get the nomination. I don't think she really wants it. I think she wants to campaign so she could make some money, fly around, have some fun. She didn't want the job. She's just doesn't want to work. And finally, I don't think it matters anyway. If she gets elected, fine. If a Democrat, fine. Republican, I don't think they really fear a Republican governor. In fact, it's so blue that they may like a Republican governor. It's someone that they can demonize and ostracize and just have as the focal point for people's hatred. The Democrats just run the place, and it's I don't know. I grew up in Detroit. It's like Detroit 30 years ago, just completely collapsing.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Antonio Villaraigosa is aggressively going after former Vice President Kamala Harris. He thinks she's vulnerable and could lose the election for governor. What say you? If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Bob writes in, listening online in Yuma, Arizona at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. After hearing all the candidates so far for governor, California is so screwed. When Mr. Peanuts is the most sane candidate, the state is in trouble.
Oh, Peanut.
Let's go to Hector in Southgate. Hector, hello.
Yes, thank you. She will win. She's going to run to try to use it as a stepping stone for another shot at the presidency. I think a good choice for me would be Bianco.
The sheriff of Riverside County, and a Republican. Thank you so much for the call, sir. Let's go to Mike in San Jose. Mike, hello.
Hey, John. First of all, I love you guys' show. I'm glad you guys are up here. I really am. It's really nice. As much as I respect your masters and poli sci, I think you're forgetting one thing: just how galactically stupid the California voter is. We have had so many opportunities, not just as parties, but as people. The recall of Gavin Newsom. Let's not forget they have a supermajority now, where even if a Steve Hilton or someone else does get in, the chance of them getting anything done is slim to none.
Well, you make a very good point. We've elected a lot of trash in this state. Let's go to Michael in Castro Valley. Michael, hello.
Hey there, thanks. Boy, I loved what Rubio had said to at that hearing. He said one of the senators, what was the one that went down to
Chris Van
Salvador.
Hollen. Yeah, Rubio sliced and diced him like a piece of chicken at Benihana.
He's beautiful. My comment is all the all this talk about Biden and his cancer, I wonder why the Republicans don't occasionally take a different tack on that and use it as a point for bringing awareness to prostate cancer and kind of take the high road, at least for a portion of while this is still in the forefront of the news.
Well, one of the things that all of those public service announcements regarding prostate cancer tell you is that men should get PSA checks on a regular basis. According to Biden's physician, he wasn't taking regular PSA checks. If that's true, that would be a dereliction of duty on the part of his doctors. I think what's more likely than not is that he has known that he has had cancer for a long period of time and purposely chose to cover it up. I don't know if you've been reading the books that are out now. I read The One Fight, and I'm reading the Jake Tapper book now. And in the Jake Tapper book, they tell the story about when his son, Bo, got cancer. He was the one that was the attorney general in Delaware who developed an aggressive form of brain cancer and ultimately died as a result. But when they first found out that he had brain cancer, they denied it. They publicly said it wasn't true. And they tried to pressure reporters into not writing about it. And they said that he was going to live, and they said that he was fine when they knew the opposite was true. But their first inclination was to hide it and deny it and attack those who said he had it. Well, apply those same principles to Joe getting cancer, and I think what you end up with is another cover-up. We know there's a cover-up in terms of his cognitive decline, but I believe there's a second cover-up that went on in that White House at the same time, covering up his prostate cancer. And if that's the case, that is beyond just dealing with a chronic illness or a disease or however it is that you want to describe it. We all wish him well. Well, maybe there are some people who don't, but I think most of us regard cancer as just being an ugly disease that we can't wait to wipe out because it's created a lot of human suffering and a lot of unnecessary loss and all of those things. I do nothing but wish the man well. But if they covered it up,
prostate gate?
It could be. It could be. In fact, I'd be willing to say it's more likely than not that's exactly what happened.
So the goal, what is the goal here through the approach that we're taking to dealing with this, with the books and the interviews? I mean, is it to discredit? I mean, the past administration, which, I mean, that's a never-ending aim. But
think about who's writing these books. It's left-wing journalists who are writing these books. If you are looking at the damage that was caused by these lies and cover-ups, the people they hurt the most are Democratic voters. Because Democratic voters were given a choice between two unelectable candidates. They had the choice between sticking with Grampy Joe or moving on to Kamala Harris. Neither one of those candidates could have beaten Donald Trump. They had a whole stable of candidates who could have beaten Donald Trump. But because of the cover-ups and because of the lies, they didn't have that option. Personally, I am happy they lied to us about all of this. First of all, I never believed them. Second of all, no one benefited from their lies more than people like me. If you wanted Donald Trump back in the White House, they created probably the one scenario that made that a reality. So for that, I'm grateful.